Hey guys, my name is Ladislav and today we're going to talk about time in the Czech language. So if you want to know how to say what time it is or at what time something is going to happen, you're in the right place. In English, the day is divided something like this. There's morning, then at 12 there's noon, then afternoon. Evening is typically approximately between 5 and 8, then there's night, and at 12 there's midnight. In Czech it's slightly different because there's one more extra part of the day. We start with morning, which is in Czech ráno, but then, let's say, between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock there's dopoledne, which is something like late morning. Noon is poledne and afternoon is odpoledne. Be careful because it's easy to confuse the prefixes. Prefix do in dopoledne means until, so dopoledne means something like until the noon. And od in odpoledne means from, so odpoledne means something like from the noon. Then we have evening, that's večer, and night is noc. Midnight would be půlnoc. Půl means half, so the logic of the word is exactly the same as in English. So these words we can easily use when we say which part of the day it is now, like je ráno means it's morning, or je noc, it's night. So we don't have to change the form of the noun. If we say when something happens, for example, something like I get up in the morning, there are some changes necessary. So I get up in the morning is vstávám ráno, no change there. Vstávám dopoledne is also the same, but then there is vstávám v poledne, I get up at noon. Vstávám odpoledne and vstávám večer, no change there, but vstávám v noci, I get up at night, and vstávám o půlnoci, I get up at midnight. In Czechia, it's common to use the 24-hour system. In English, it's sometimes called military time. The easiest way to tell what time it is just to read the numbers. So when somebody asks, kolik je hodin? What time it is, you simply look at your phone and say 7:30, 9:45, 12:20, 18:53, 20:00, 23:15. So basically, if you know the numbers from 0 to 59, you're good. Now, when you say when something happens, like I get up at 7:30, you only need to add the preposition v or ve. Vstávám v 7:30. Vlak přijíždí v 23:15. You don't change any form of the numerals. So it's very easy, but there's of course another style of telling time. It comes from reading an analog clock and it contains halves and quarters just like it does in English. Let's start with whole hours. The question, what's the time, kolik je hodin, or its shorter version, kolik je, you can answer jedna hodina, meaning 1 o'clock, or just jedna. 2, 3 and 4 o'clock would be 2, 3 and 4 hodiny. So we of course can say just 2, 3 or 4. But if we add hodiny, it has to be in a different form than with 1 o'clock. Jedna hodina, 2 hodiny, 3 hodiny, 4 hodiny. Then from 5 to 12, we again need to use a different form and it is hodin. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 hodin. In case we say when something happens, for example, when we answer the question v kolik hodin tam budeš or v kolik tam budeš, meaning what time are you going to be there, we have to add a preposition v or ve. V is an equivalent of English in, and there's no difference in the meaning of v and ve, as these two variants exist only so that we can use the one that's easier to pronounce in relation to the following word. So if somebody asks, v kolik tam budeš? If the answer is at 1 or at 1 o'clock, we'll actually have to not only add the preposition v, but also change the word itself and say v jednu or v jednu hodinu. But don't worry, this is the only time when we have to do something like that in this table. From 2 to 4 we use ve, so ve dvě, ve tři and ve čtyři hodiny. From 5 to 11 it's v, so v 5, v 6, v 7 and so on. And with 12 we again use ve, so ve 12 or ve 12 hodin. By the way, using the word hodinu, hodiny or hodin when telling time may sound a bit formal for everyday conversation, and I'd say it's more common not to add this word. In the majority of cases, it is the context that gives us the information about which part of the day we're talking about. For example, when I say we have lunch at 1, obědváme v 1, it is clear that we are talking about 1 p.m. However, sometimes it is necessary to add this information to the time itself. Since there are no expressions in Czech that would be the equivalent of AM or PM, we'll have to use words, or at least some words, from the table we had here before. And most commonly it will be these ones: ráno, dopoledne, odpoledne and večer. So, for example, I'll be there at 6 a.m. would be budu tam v 6 ráno. I'll be there at 6 p.m. budu tam v 6 večer. While in English this would be 4:15, in Czech it is 4:45. So literally 4:45, meaning a quarter of 5. So the logic here is a bit different than in English, but it's fairly consistent and it applies for half and quarter to as well. So 4:30 is půl páté, which translates as half of 5. Quarter to 5 is 3/4, and that's something like 3/4 of 5. Using čtvrt na and 3/4 is easy. We just need to add the specific hour. So if it is 7, this is 4:45, and this is 3/4. And that goes for all the hours with the exception of one. With čtvrt na and 3/4, we have to use the form jednu. So čtvrt na jednu and 3/4. If we say when something happens, like answering the question v kolik tam budeš, what time are you going to be there, we add the preposition ve. So, for example, ve 6:45, ve 3/4. And of course, if the context is not clear enough and we need to add the part of the day, we can say ve 6:45 ráno or ve 6:45 večer. With half of an hour, it's a little bit more complicated. So far, we used so-called cardinal numbers like jedna, dvě, tři, čtyři, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. With půl, we are going to use ordinal numbers like druhý, třetí, čtvrtý, pátý, meaning second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. But not only that, we have to use the right form of these ordinal numerals. See, we're literally going to say half of the 7th hour. And because hour or hodina is a feminine noun, we also have to change the numeral into its feminine form. That would be sedma. However, since we're saying half of, půl, we also need to use the genitive case, which is sedmé. So, sedmé hodiny would mean of the 7th hour. However, we're not going to say the word hodiny. Historically, it was there, but it disappeared. So what we get is půl sedmé. When we say when something happens, we use the preposition o. So budu tam o půl sedmé. I'll be there at 6:30. As I said, we're going to use the ordinal numbers, but again, there's one exception, and that's again when we use the number 1. The first is in Czech první. However, here we're going to use the cardinal numeral, and 12:30 is actually půl jedné, not půl první. Then we have půl druhé, půl třetí, půl čtvrté, půl páté, půl šesté, půl sedmé, půl osmé, půl deváté, půl desáté, půl jedenácté, and půl dvanácté. So it's good to remember that with the exception of třetí, all of them end in long air. So there will be whole hours, quarters and halves. But what do we do when the long hand is stuck somewhere in between, like this? Well, we could always resort to using the digital system and just say the numbers 5:05 or 17:05, depending on the part of the day. However, we can actually use the analog system here too. And we can do it by using what we already talked about, meaning how we use whole hours, čtvrt, půl, and 3/4, and add or subtract 5 or 10 minutes from these. If this is 5 or 5 hodin, if we add 5 minutes, we'll get 5 hodin a 5 minut, meaning 5 o'clock and 5 minutes. So we added 5 minutes to the whole hour. But if this is 5:45 and we subtract 10 minutes from it, we'll get the same time, and so we can say za 10 minut 4:45. Which means in 10 minutes 5:15, or literal translation would be in 10 minutes 5:45. Then let's move the long hand 5 minutes forward and we get this. We can say 5:10 or 17:10, but again using the analog system we can say 5 hodin a 10 minut or za 5 minut 5:45. Now let's go through all the possibilities. 8 hodin a 5 minut or za 10 minut 8:45. 8 hodin a 10 minut o za 5 minut 8:45. 8:45 a 5 minut o za 10 minut 8:30. 8:45 a 10 minut o za 5 minut 8:30. 8:30 a 5 minut o za 10 minut 8:45. 8:30 a 10 minut o za 5 minut 8:45. 8:45 a 5 minut o za 10 minut 9 hodin. 8:45 a 10 minut o za 5 minut 9 hodin. To make the sentence a bit shorter, very often in informal speech, the word minut is omitted when we are subtracting time. So instead of za 5 minut 7:45, we can say za 5 7:45. The same omission happens with the word hodin when we are subtracting time from a whole hour. For example, za 10 minut 6 hodin can turn into za 10 6, making it much shorter and less formal. However, this omission doesn't work when we are adding time. In those cases, we have to use the full form, like for example, 5 hodin a 5 minut. I hope you enjoyed the lesson as well as I did. Hit the like button and subscribe, download the materials, look at other videos that we have here, and of course, don't forget to tune in next time, because we're going to talk about something interesting again. Thanks for watching, have a great day.